Okay, we just did this scene last night on a piece of really cool vintage paper. And I was talking with a new customer about the use of vellum in scenes. And I thought that kind of makes me curious. I have this other half of this vintage paper that belongs like right down here. So I thought, I might test out how this vellum might influence this same scene here, okay? So one of the things about vellum is it's translucent, okay? So if you have things behind it and place the vellum over the top of it, it kind of diffuses it. It knocks it down a certain percentage in value. So I thought it might be interesting to see how it could affect this piece, because this piece right here, just in terms of the overall mood of it, I think the vellum could potentially do a good job. Okay, so for example, we have this background in here, and I've created some depth with the use of, by stamping this tree off once and then using that second impression and to make really light impressions in the background. But we can almost look at it like this. We have these trees right here that are the most distant, in addition to these ones in the deep distance. And then we have these objects right here that are kind of mid-distance. And then we have our foreground right in here, okay? So the way that you can approach using vellum potentially in this is what I'm thinking here in theory, is that I stamp these objects right here onto the background paper, okay? Now I'm thinking about these mid ground objects right here, the rocks and these trees right here, potentially on the back of the vellum, okay? And then on the front of the vellum, I'll just retain that area for the front, the foreground right here for the front of the vellum. So we go near, a little bit more distant, and the farthest down here. Okay, so front, back, there, farther, closer, closest. Okay, so we'll see if it works out. Sometimes the vellum, I don't know, sometimes the vellum, it's a little bit more see-through than I thought it would be. Sometimes it's a little bit more opaque. So I never really know for sure. I haven't done this, like, I've been using, experimenting on vellum for a while, but not a huge amount, like 100 times or anything like that. So I'm still kind of learning in many ways. Okay, so here's the thing. On this paper right here, I think I'm going to go with my hybrid ink for my impressions. And then I'm going to use the Brilliance. I like using this Brilliance, which is a water-based pigment ink. Most pigment inks are oil-based. And they made this one, Tsukaneko, to dry quickly on less than real porous surfaces. So they made it to dry on glossy pretty much, but it dries on vellum really nicely. You might have to heat set a little bit just depending on how wet your pad is, but it'll dry on here just fine, but it'll dry a little bit faster and also darker than, say, something like a dye-based ink, which you can try on here. You can try a StazOn on here too. I don't know. I tend to think that a little bit of a thicker ink sometimes prints a little bit more solid than kind of a thinner ink, such as a dye or a solvent-based, like a StazOn ink. But you can experiment around. Okay, so I'm going to pause this video and save you some viewing time here and get these things stepped. And I'll resume with each step of the way. Okay, 3 impressions with the little rock cluster here. 1, 2, and 3. And then 5 impressions with this smaller spooky tree. So I go 1 impression and then 2 impressions at full strength, at full ink. And then these 3 right here, I inked it up, blotted it off once, and stamped it re-inked blot stamp like that to get these lighter impressions back there. Now, what I'm going to do, I didn't really know if I should put, where I should put the, this moon here, if I should put it onto the back of the vellum. I didn't know. I think I'm just going to throw it right on down onto this background paper. I think that stands out decent enough. I think that looks reasonably moody like that, so we'll go ahead and do that now. Okay, I have my white pigment ink. You can use any type of pigment ink. I am using the Brilliance, but on this type of matte paper like this, you can use whatever you want. All right, now, if you didn't watch my video yesterday, or I don't know, wherever I do this type of moon or sun, I typically vary my amount of ink that I apply. I just think it's a little bit more interesting to have kind of a varied lightness, light source in the scene. I think it looks more natural. What I mean by that is, so I'm applying more of the white ink up top and then less down below, so that kind of transitions like that. Now this one's going to have to be peering through the vellum, so I don't know, maybe I should put a little bit more and try to build up a little bit of a thicker buildup of that white on there than the one that I did yesterday. Okay. Okay, now this right here has this little horizon glow. And again, I'm not quite sure where to put that. I can probably put it on the front of the vellum just fine, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on the back of the vellum, or on the surface of this paper under the vellum. I'll start it off. I'll probably do some tweaking to it. But one of the things that I'll do too, okay, so here's what I just thought of. Okay, so I'm going to stamp out this Ferryman on my vellum so I can put down this. That'll save me some time here because I don't have to work around that Ferryman. You know, as if I had just stamped him right down here. You know, kind of working some of this illumination around him. I can just put it in back of him. I didn't put it in back of him here because I just stamped this directly. And what I was saying yesterday is that sometimes when you stamp an image over the top of white pigment ink, you don't get as dark of an impression. So I stamped that figure first, and then I had to kind of work my way around that figure a little bit with the white pigment ink. I mean, you can get some of that white pigment on the, the figure too, and maybe it looks like they're in, a bit of a fog or something like that. But I didn't want too much on them. So here, I don't have to worry about it because it's not going to be stamped on the same surface. And trying to transition this a little bit. A little bit thicker up here and less down here, and doing those kind of striations in the water like this. I'm flicking this out from the center of this light reflection. See how that goes down like that? You can kind of use a little bit of your nail if you want to get a little bit of a sharper application of that ink. See, like that, I'm kind of pressing into the cotton ball with a little bit of my nail right here. Okay. I think that's probably good enough. Because I can always add some more pigment ink over the top of the vellum. You can do it on the back of the vellum too, you know, if you want to do a lot of planning, but that's a lot of planning. All right, so that's what we're looking at right now. It's already kind of looking hazier and moodier with this. Now it's going to look different when I apply some sealant over the top on this, and I apply this over the top. Sometimes the relative opacity, it's translucent, but it moves a little bit more towards opacity or transparency when you apply some liquid adhesive on the back of this, and then you adhere it. Sometimes it becomes a little bit more see-through usually, but I think that'll do right now. Pretty good. Okay, let's switch off to the Brilliance ink, Brilliance black from the my hybrid black ink pad, wherever it went. Okay, so let's see. So these rocks on this scene, they're about midway up and a little bit less. Okay, so you have to think about it in reverse here. So these rocks are going to go in right here. And I'm doing it on the back of the vellum, so they're going to be reversed out. So I want to go to about right here for this impression. Okay, so roughly about midway up and about that far in with this one, okay? Ink up usually a little bit more than you think you're going to need. I'm not going to be using this whole rock cluster here, but I ink up a little bit more than what I need of it, just so that when I stamp it out, I'm not missing some spot if I end up using more than I thought. Okay, here we go right here. Hold down a little bit longer than, you know, an impression on matte cardstock or something like that. Just to allow that ink to transfer a little bit more. Okay. All right, so that is that. Be careful when placing this down, like, see that overstamping right there? Because that might be a little bit wet. And then you lay this down and it gets on the back of your paper, but in this case, it's see-through paper, so, you know, it could get, it could infect it a little bit. Okay, let's see. All right, so that's right about right there. And this one goes to about right here, okay? So I'll be going down about right here. The two scenes are going to be a little bit, you know, different. I'm not, you know, like measuring it off like so carefully. All right, and we have our large haunted tree. Be careful with that. That's still a little bit wet. I'm not working with a lot of stamps, what it feels like I am, just because I'm having to kind of watch what I touch here with these wet impressions. And normally, you know, when you're working on a piece of card or cardstock or something like that, if you get some ink on the back of it, it doesn't matter. But on the back of vellum, again, because it's see-through, you know, you'll be able to see that through the other side. So, like my little, you know, inky fingers, I should probably be a little bit more careful about that, where I normally don't have to worry about that, like, at all. Okay, let's see here. Let's go down about, let's wipe off some of this ink off the bottom of this because I'm going to be stamping this tree coming from that rock cluster there. So let's go about right here. Okay, that looks pretty cool. So this is the back where I stamped it. It's fairly dark, but then you flip it around and you see it's a lesser value. I'd say it looks like a 50% gray or something like that at this point in time. So it's going to be looking like, and I need to be careful because I don't want to put this down here and get these wet impressions on top of this, but okay, I can't put it too close. I need to make sure this is dry here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow this to dry. I'll heat set a little bit, but I usually like to let it set up for, I don't know, 5 minutes or so before I start heat setting it. And again, this is a water-based kind of faster drying ink. It's not like a StazOn that dries instantly, but it will dry a little bit faster than a lot of different types of inks. And then we'll do that, and then we'll get started on the front side of the vellum with our foreground impressions. Oh, I forgot. I was going to put this Ferryman here too on in kind of the mid-ground tones. So this is what's one of those things that's really cool about this too is I could put them on the front and it'll be faced the same way, but if you want to reverse your character's kind of direction, you can do that here with Vellum. Okay, so let's see. This one isn't this one, but I need to use the one I'm using now. Okay, so this one's gonna go like that. I need to kind of get my placement of them. Okay, so I'm gonna put them like right around here, I think. It's kind of interesting working back front like this. It's like we're still working in 2 dimensions, but it's a little bit more of like almost like a 3-dimensional sensibility, I guess. Thinking about these layers like this. Okay, now this creature, the Ferryman, I want him to be pretty dark still, so... And he's a pretty solid image, so I'll press and hold a little bit longer. If you lift this up and it didn't stamp out, absolutely flat and solid on the vellum, just, fill it in. I always keep like a Sharpie pen next to me, for things like, mostly for metallics, but you never know on the vellum too. It's not like super porous. See, he's got a little bit of, touches of irregular stamping on there, but it doesn't look too bad. Okay, so this is what it's looking like. A little bit, like I said, I can't merge these completely, but so this is the back of the vellum. This is the or this is the back. This will be the back of the vellum. This is where I stamped it on. This is what they look like, the back side like that. So okay, so let's let this set up a little bit, and then let's get that foreground in there. Then, I don't know, I'll probably add some tones in here, some shadow work on the papers themselves, but I'll probably do most of it on the front side of the vellum. All right, this is not 100% dry, but I've heat set it a little bit with my heat gun, and I don't know, it's been sitting around for about 10 minutes, but I think it will be dry enough to proceed here. All right, so this is what we're looking at right now, roughly, okay? So you see on the back of the vellum, it doesn't real, it doesn't, I don't know if it looks like it's on the back of vellum. It could be on the front of the vellum. When you stamp the back of vellum with some pretty thick inks, it reads pretty clear in terms of the value of it, you know, the darkness. But let's just proceed and let's see if we can get a little bit of contrast between the front of the vellum imagery and the back of the vellum. There's not going to be too many things on the front of it. I just have a couple impressions of the boulders with lichen and the top of the large tree coming in on the sides here. Okay, let's give it a try. And again, we'll go with the Brilliance ink. Okay, let's see. Now these ones I want to be really dark, so I'm going to press and hold for a little bit longer. I wanted these ones on the back of the vellum to be pretty dark too, but you know, especially with these foreground images. You know, sometimes you can go, I think I've done it like once or twice where you can go kind of lighter in the foreground, darker in the middle, and then lighter in the background. So it goes light, dark, light. Yeah, I don't do that too much though. It's kind of a tricky little thing to do. But I seem to recall that it worked. It might have even been on metallic or something like that. I seem to recall kind of playing around with the white Brilliance ink on that one. I don't recall exactly what that piece was, though. All right, and our tree, okay. Okay, I have this coming in from the side here. I might be doing some adjustments to the composition based on what I see here. Okay, again, I want this tree to come out reasonably dark. No, good. That came out pretty dark there. It might not look that dark, but I think it's a little bit darker than the background tree. As far as the way it looks now. It could change, though, because when these inks dry, you know, they can kind of take on a little bit of different characteristic. Okay, let's see. All right, like so. Press and hold. One of the things I forgot to do is well, I don't know if I got to do it, but I'll do it right now, is I'll put on some of these pebbles, the tiny rocks small, in the distance, just like I did on this piece. You know, these little rocky textural transitions. All right, ready or not? Yeah, looks pretty decent, I'd say. All right, that's what we're looking at right here, front of Vellum impressions. And again, the 1, 2, 3 impressions on the back. You see when you flip it over, the foreground impressions are lighter because they're on the other side of the vellum. Look at this, my hand's kind of a little bit warm right now, so it's making the vellum curl like that. All right, so I need to be careful about this. Again, that will be a little bit moist for a little bit of time. All right, so now I could use the Brilliance Black for these impressions, but I used my hybrid on this one, so I think I'll just do the same here. These textural little additions really kind of anchor the imagery into the scene really conveniently, and they can provide a little bit of shading if you do them en masse like that. So I like them varied. Okay, so that'll be the background. And then if I do some more, I'll do them on top of the front of the vellum so I can, position these rocks exactly where I want them to go. All right, so we have a little bit of waiting time on this. And then again, we can heat set it too. So we're not talking about a huge amount of time or anything like that, but 10 minutes or so, you can go get a drink or whatever when you're making these pieces. But yeah, we're looking at this right here so far. So it's taken on a little bit of a different characteristic or twist to the look of it. It's not going to be that opaque, okay, when I add on that adhesive in there and I merge these two pieces together, it should look a little bit different, but a little bit of a different spirit to it. It's kind of cool. Maybe this one's a little bit more complex looking, I don't know. But I don't know, you can decide if you like, which one do you like when we get to that point. All right, this has been allowed to dry a little bit, then I hit it with a heat gun a little bit on each side. I don't like to use the heat gun on this too much because vellum can get kind of ripply. And this is going to be adhered to this in the end, and it'll be flattened out anyway, but it's just easier to work with if it's not quite so rippled and textured. But I think it's dry enough to where we'll get started on some additional effects here. Okay, so what I did was I went in and I anchored down my imagery and increased the light direction on this piece with the use of shadows. So let's go ahead and add in some of those shadows here. I won't go talk about this too much because you can watch the previous video on my my take on shadows, where to add them, how fast to add them, etc. I just want to get through this really quickly here and not reiterate everything and bore everyone again. It's kind of, I'm not really quite certain how dark to make my shadows, just in relation to the vellum. Should I go a little bit darker maybe, or do we push depth further with the use of kind of lighter tones in the background maybe? Deeper shadows. Maybe on the top of the vellum, I'm not sure. We'll go with kind of medium tones here, maybe. All right, so that's kind of my shading work in here. See, I'm leaving kind of the tops of the rocks a little bit lighter, look, to make it look like they're capturing some light. And while I'm on this, maybe I'll add a little bit of highlights on tops of some of these rocks with a little bit of a white charcoal pen. I didn't do this yesterday, but this is going to be I'm going to be applying workable, I mean, not a workable fixative, spray adhesive right over the top of this. So I think I'll just do this right here, right now. So I'm kind of extending out those, that lighting that we started with the white pigment ink. Go about like so, I think. Let's take a look here. Like something like that. Is it too much? I don't know. Okay, so this, I think this is ready for my spray adhesive and adhering these two together. The ink might be a little bit wet on there, but we're just going to go for it. So do you apply the spray adhesive on this or on the back of this? Okay, so I mean, even just holding this, the heat of my hand can start to make it curl. So this one's much more kind of, whatever, influenced by things that are applied to it than this just piece of, letter, thick, cardstock here. Or not cardstock, but paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my spray adhesive over the top of this. It might curl a little bit, but not as much as this would curl. So it's just so much easier to apply it to the piece that's less prone, to influence. And what I'll do is I'll try to spray a nice even coat over the top of this, and it's again, it's spray adhesive, and that's just the easiest thing to use on with vellum, because that spray adhesive goes on nice and thin and evenly. Usually, okay, you don't spray it real close, but standard spray painting types of techniques, or you spray from distance and usually in a sweeping motion, or you can do like slight bursts. Okay. All right, we have a thin coat on there. I don't know, you can see it's a little frosted maybe with some of that glue on there. All right, now sometimes you might want to work from one way to the next, but sometimes it, if it's a little rippled, you got to be careful about that. So I'm just going to try to place this down as best as I can. Okay, I'm going to place it right here. Now, it's adhering, both ways, but what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to spread this out from the middle to out. I don't always get it like perfectly, I can see some of my paper sticking out, but you just get it as best as you can. Okay, so I'm starting from the inside and then I'm working out like that. Sometimes when you work from one side to the next, you get over here and there's like a, ripple or something like that. Maybe not so much like a half page, but if you're trying to do like a full page, it can get a little tricky. What you want to just try to avoid if you can are air bubbles. I get them, and you can just kind of burnish them out a little bit, but if you can avoid them, absolutely try to avoid them. I've done it where I've done 2 layers of vellum before, and that got really tricky. Okay, let me see here. I'm looking on the back of this. I see a little bit of an impression of my tree here, like down here, I think. Or no, that's on here. I was seeing as some of this ink was still a little bit wet. It looks like it's pretty dry. When I go like this, I'm not getting some of that tree showing. Maybe a little bit on some of those edges there, but not too bad. And I don't see any air bubbles, so I shouldn't have a problem with that. Okay, now we're going to apply some more of my little rocks in here. Question mark. Or should I add in the shadows first? Okay, this is really dry right now. I'm going to add in some of the shading right now. It might not be a good idea because it's easier to stamp this right on top of this and have it dry. Okay, I'm going to do that. I was going to say, if I lay down some of this waxy coating, this ink might not stick to it. Okay, so yeah, you got to think about sequencing a little bit. I was going to say, I really feel like, adding in some shading work in here right now because it's so fun to do, but I will wait. Okay, adding in some more of this texturing. Texturing is fun too, but shading is really fun. Lighting our pieces is really fun to do. Going for multiple values of this rocky texture here. It's going to look a little bit busy down here, but remember we are going to add in some, some additional shading right over the top of it. This gives me a little bit of a head start with shading too. I need a little bit in here. I don't want those rocks in there to be too textured because they're more distant, but I think it looks pretty good. But look at that lighting in there. Lighting in there is a little bit stronger, I think, design-wise than the non-vellum, with that light coming down that way. So it's taking on a little bit of a different mood. But we'll finish this off with some additional... I might put in like an overhang. Now that I see these trees up here are so light, I can put like a craggy overhanging limb in there too. Or do we just leave it open? Maybe I'll leave it like that just so we can really showcase the depth in there. Okay, so we have to wait for these little rocks to dry. Then we'll go in and add in some shadow. Then I'll trim off a little bit of this perimeter just where, I didn't match up the vellum perfectly with the, the base design. And then we'll get this formatted up and we'll take a look and see what it looks like. Kind of matted and complete. Okay, we've allowed the tiny rocks to dry a little bit. And it looks like they've dried enough. And we'll go in and add, kind of a mass, a visual weight to our objects by adding in the shadow at the base of them. And it makes your objects just seem more three-dimensional with the addition of shading. When you add in shading, you're adding in light too. You make something a little bit darker here, and anything that's lighter, next to it or whatever around it becomes a little bit lighter by contrast. Okay, now I did shade these items back here on the vintage paper, but I'm just going in and adding a little bit more. I don't want to add it too dark because nothing back there is dark, being, buried underneath a layer of vellum. Okay, making the mid-ground objects, the shadows, fairly dark and mottled, about like so. And let's do these rocks right here. What you do is you do portions of the rocks, but not the very top, and it'll look like the light is hitting those rocks from the top. Okay, so see how this is much more open. There is some shading that I do on the design, but you can adjust it accordingly with some additional grayscale work on there. Now this rock right here, I didn't make, I didn't stamp dark enough. This one's a lot darker, as you can see. So maybe I can add in a little bit of additional value contrast with my pencil here. A little sticky right here. Anyways, looks like that. I can see if I can add on a little bit more highlighting on the right on the top of the vellum with my pastel pencil. So you shade the bottom side of those rocks and then you highlight the top side. All right. Takes on a little bit of a different spirit, so to speak. I don't know which one I like better. This one's a lot darker, maybe more dramatic. This one could be a little bit moodier. I don't know. We'll get it framed off and we'll see if that does something to it. Usually when you matte things off, it it looks a little bit more complex and finished. So we'll give that a try here. Gotta make sure everything's dry and we'll take a look. All right, we're all formatted up here. Let's see if I can get these two within the frame. And you can take a look here. A little bit more atmospheric up here. The power is down here, though, I'd say. I can add a little bit more, kind of depth on these objects, though, with some additional tone. Where you can't really do it on here because they're already kind of dark, but let's see it. I wanted to add a little bit of extra depth here. I can make this tree here because it's stamped on the back side of the vellum and lighter than black. So I add a little bit of subtlety to this, maybe, and making maybe the bottom side of the branch is a little bit darker, the right side of the trunk a little bit darker. Maybe some of these rocks can be, I don't know, maybe like a 90% gray, in addition to probably like an 80% or something like that. Yeah, it looks pretty good right there. Seeing the left side of that's just slightly lighter. My guy didn't stamp out completely black, but we'll just kind of fill it in with some additional tone here. But what I'll do is maybe I can vary the darkness on him. So go a little bit darker on the figure and maybe get a little bit of variation here in the water. And I think that looks pretty decent. Something like that. Okay, I was being a little bit too delicate on these rocks. Apparently I can get a lot darker here. I still want to have him varied, you know, with light and shade on the forms, but in the darker areas we'll go quite a bit darker. Yeah, quite a bit. I'm talking about like maybe like 7% darker or something like that. And that looks pretty decent. All right, so anyway, I got the vellum and just straight paper technique here. Yeah, did the vellum kind of add anything to it? It did, but the question is it worth it? You know, this one took a little bit more time. I had to let things dry a little bit and before proceeding, but I don't know, a little bit of a difference in mood. I think I might add this little word stamp that I was going to add in here, but then I was like, I don't want to do that. But I thought on this one I might do it. I don't know, I like the word in there, but I don't know. I can't find a really good place to place it in here, because I like what's happening in there. So it's like I don't know if I want to cover anything up. I guess I could just stamp it directly over the top of that, and I think it would stand out. You know, being that everything in the background is so much lighter. But do I do that? I don't know. Yeah, I'll try to figure it out. Anyway, thanks for watching this little experiment here with the vellum. And hope you enjoyed kind of the little comparison here and seeing just a different, slightly different look. And I don't know, kind of feel to the difference in surfaces. If you have any questions, drop me a note in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching.